The autumn wind carried whispers of winter through the dense forest as Julia made her way along the familiar hiking trail. Her boots crunched against fallen leaves, creating a rhythmic melody that had become her meditation over the past few months. After losing her job and ending a long relationship, these solitary walks had become her refuge, a place where she could breathe without the weight of expectation. That it was the whimpering that broke her reverie at first. Julia thought it was the wind playing tricks, but as she rounded a bend near the old oak tree, the sound grew clearer, desperate, frightened, and heartbreakingly small. She stopped, her heart hammering as she scanned the undergrowth. There, partially hidden behind a fallen log, huddled a tiny wolf cub, no more than a few weeks old. The cub's gray fur was matted with mud and debris, and its amber eyes were wide with terror. When Julia took a step closer, the little creature pressed itself harder against the log, trembling so violently that its entire body seemed to vibrate. "Hey there, little one," Julia whispered, slowly crouching down to make herself less threatening. She'd volunteered at a wildlife rehabilitation center during college, and some instincts never faded. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The cub whimpered again, a sound so pitiful that Julia felt tears prick her eyes. She looked around, searching for any sign of the mother or the pack, but the forest remained eerily silent. No rustling, no warning growls, nothing. The cub was alone. Julia knew she should call the wildlife authorities, but her phone showed no signal this deep in the woods. The sun was already beginning its descent, and temperatures would drop rapidly once darkness fell. The cub wouldn't survive the night alone, not in this condition. "I'm going to come closer now," she said softly, extending her hand slowly. The cub flinched but had nowhere to go. As Julia's fingers brushed its fur, she felt the rapid hammering of its tiny heart. The poor creature was terrified. When Julia carefully scooped the cub into her arms, it went rigid, its shaking intensifying. She tucked it gently against her chest, wrapping her fleece jacket around its small body. The cub made a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a cry, that seemed to carry all the loneliness in the world. I know," Julia murmured, beginning the trek back to her cabin. "You're scared. I understand." The walk back felt endless. The cub remained tense in her arms, its trembling never ceasing. Julia talked to it the entire way, her voice low and soothing, telling it about the warm cabin, about the fireplace, about anything she could think of to fill the silence. Once inside, Julia set the cub down on a pile of soft blankets near the fireplace. She quickly started a fire and prepared a makeshift bed. All while the cub watched her with those haunted amber eyes still shaking. It hadn't moved from where she'd placed it, as if too afraid to even attempt escape. Julia warmed some milk, not ideal, but it would have to do until she could get proper supplies in the morning. She poured it into a small bowl and set it near the cub, then retreated to give it space. The cub didn't move toward the milk. It just sat there, trembling, staring at nothing. Hours passed. Julia made phone calls, leaving messages with the wildlife center and animal control. But it was after hours and she'd have to wait until morning. She made herself tea, tried to read, attempted to give the cub space, but she couldn't stop watching it. The little creature hadn't stopped shaking once. As midnight approached, Julia couldn't take it anymore. She moved closer to the cub, settling onto the floor beside the blankets. The cub's eyes tracked her movement, but it didn't try to escape. "I know how you feel," Julia said quietly, surprising herself with the admission. "Lost, alone, wondering if anyone will ever find you." The cub's ears twitched slightly. "I've been there," Julia continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Feeling like you have no one, like you're completely on your own in this big, scary world." The cub made that sound again, the one that was neither growl nor cry, and Julia realized what it was. It was a question, a desperate, lonely question. Julia reached out slowly, her fingers hovering just above the cub's head. "You know what the hardest part is?" she whispered, believing that someone could actually want to stay, that you're not too broken or too much trouble or too anything. The cub's shaking seemed to intensify, and Julia saw her own pain reflected in those amber eyes. Without thinking, she spoke the words she'd needed to hear for months. "I have no family," the cub seemed to say, through its trembling, through its fear, through its absolute devastation. Julia's hand finally made contact, resting gently on the cub's small head. Her throat tightened with emotion as she leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You have me." For a moment, nothing changed. The fire crackled, the wind howled outside, and then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the trembling began to subside. The cub's rigid muscles started to relax, its breathing becoming less frantic. It leaned, just slightly, into Julia's touch. And finally, For the first time since she'd found it, the cub stopped shaking. Julia felt tears stream down her cheeks as the tiny creature let out a long, shuddering breath and closed its eyes. She kept her hand there, gentle and steady, a silent promise in the darkness. Sometimes, she realized, healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about finding someone who would sit with you in the brokenness and whisper, "You're not alone anymore." As the fire burned low and the night deepened, Julia and the cub stayed there together, two lost souls who had found, in each other, something that felt remarkably like home.